This one is not that forward leaping, but we feel like it was worth including because it's kind of like near term, maybe the first 5 years. And it's really starting to think about how we have to know the customer's path to purchase truly and authentically to be able to actually know that we can invest wisely and grow our businesses, right? And so it's been okay, especially in the digital world, to just focus on the bottom of funnel. Someone's searching to buy something, we make sure we're there, that they can be found, and then we acquire that. And we want to acquire that, and that's obviously where you start. We, however, want to make sure that we're always investing up the funnel, right? So once you max out that bottom, or there isn't an opportunity to get more volume in that space of profitably, it's thinking about, okay, how do we think more about what that, again, where that consumer had a trigger moment to actually start shopping for your product, and then what that journey looked like all the way through. Today, we assume that the journey is necessarily, our understanding of it is necessarily like this. And it is like this, but our understanding of it doesn't have to be like this, because if it's like this, from an understanding point of view, then we can't develop like legit sound marketing strategies, and we can't invest wisely. So we have to bring order to that. And starts by understanding, like we just talked about, I think a lot of times I've been talking to clients lately as we've been thinking about this, it's like, well, what is that trigger moment? What is that moment someone says, I need a generator, or I need a new baseball bat? And how does that moment, what was the catalyst in that moment? And if we know that, then we have a better opportunity to understand what their path then would be, and we can influence it more quickly, right? And so we can bring order to that last slide and make it look more like this, where we truly know what marketing channels should align with each part of that customer's path, from the the trigger, to converting and becoming a customer. And that's really that's the strategy. But here's the warning. It is so easy for marketing to be built, marketing strategies and marketing investments to be built upon assumptions about how accurate our beliefs and opinions are on things, especially when we think we can speak on behalf of our customers. Adept currently is undergoing a research project, not doing it ourselves, even though we do it all the time, to avoid what we call implicit bias. And there's a study it was a study at Stanford that happened after some like really controversial football game between two Ivy League schools, where both teams, both fans thought like the other was just like, the most evil, cheating, bad calling, group of mongers ever on the planet. And they actually did a valid study and found that both teams legitimately, with 100% authenticity, believed that their statistics and opinions about the game were 100% true. And they were both wrong, both sides completely wrong. Yet all the time, we spend millions of dollars collectively on marketing based on our belief that something is true, when in reality, it might be built on it might have implicit biases that allow us to think it's true, but it's not. And so you've all, I'm sure, thought, like, how could that person be so dumb? They're not, probably. It's probably you. The reason that this happens, like we could talk about what types of biases there are, but like the core is just understanding where a bias comes from. I really liked this illustration from a book called Creating Great Choices, which really helps you understand that the reason that we can make bad decisions and not know it is because the world is ridiculously complex, right? Just driving home tonight, you're gonna be exposed to 1,000 scenarios where you could die. You don't realize it because you simplify all of that into a mental model, which is just, this is how I drive. I don't have to think about it. I just know I gotta get out of the way. Oh, there's a truck coming over. Just moving along. Like, that is because you've made a model in your mind, so you're not actually having to process it all. Otherwise, you would not be able to survive. We would be overload. But what the problem then is when we make decisions based on that version of the world, when actuality the world looks like that. And it happens in everything, and it's necessary. The problem is we just have to know about it. If we don't know about it, then, as the book points out, we're making bad decisions that can be tracked back to these unarticulated models. We don't know these models exist because we haven't bothered to think about them, and then the unsurfaced assumptions that we didn't realize we were making. So the point is here, to wrap that up, is to challenge your assumptions to improve your marketing. I think that's really the key. And one of the assumptions that we all make when it comes to marketing is that we know our customers. I would challenge you to make a list of all the things you think are true and then decide how sure you are. Are you going to bet your next 10 years on it, or should you try to validate it a little bit? Think about what the implicit biases are. There's articles about this everywhere. And those bias articles, just reading through them will help you realize a little bit, like, oh, I might be guilty of that. In my relationship with my wife, I'm guilty of this all the time. Objective facts, the facts that confirm my beliefs, and what I see is where they overlap. But we all do that with statistics too. When people say statistics can say anything, it's confirmation bias. And then I think, and this is not a sales pitch, but create a plan to get an objective data and third-party inferences. So when you think about, that book also talked about these ladders of inferences, which is like you start a project and try to understand data, all the ways that bias can inject itself, starting with just what data you use, and then how you infer what the data means. And if you're doing that internally, you may not be getting the right path to purchase, or you may not be thinking objectively without bias. And then once you know that and know it authentically and objectively, modify your marketing strategy, because undoubtedly it would need modified.